At lower frequencies, scientists are predicting damage to eyes, loss of insect populations which are already declining, antibiotic resistance in bacteria, and physiological effects on the nervous system and on the immune system.
And in fact, we're starting to see some of the behavior from my industry similar to what the tobacco industry did over the last few decades. The telecommunications industry has over 500 lobbyists working in Congress and other areas of legislature protecting the industry. Together, all of these issues that I've referenced, plus the general lack of awareness in the general public, have led us to the situation where we are today. So where are we today? Today we currently have a significant amount of exposure in our homes, in our businesses, in our schools, and in most public areas we go to. Cisco has announced and predicted by 2030 there will be over 500 billion wirelessly connected devices in the world. That works out to be almost 60 devices for every person on the planet.
I thought I would start with Dr. Henry Lai actually saying in his words what happened with his study, which found cell phone radiation led to DNA damage in animals. And this is just excerpts from a online video. You can watch the whole video. It's over an hour long.
So what we did is that we had the rats that we exposed to a very low level of microwave. So it's not a heating effect. It's a very, very low level compared to what we use for cooking. And then we look at the DNA in the cells in the brain of this animal after exposure. And we found that the DNA, there's an increase in DNA breakage or DNA damage in these cells, these brain cells. So that's the, I guess it's very important finding. And at that time we were very puzzled by this effect because the radiation is very, very low. And, but well, we consistently observe DNA damage. At that time, we did not know what happened. And actually, there was an internal memo that leaked out from Motorola, and the memo basically tried to find some way to discredit our results.
As well as other members of the industry, I understand that someone contacted both NIH and perhaps someone else contacted the University of Washington president at the time, trying to get you fired for that?
That's true, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I have to imagine that was that must have been somewhat surprising to you.
Yes, actually that was actually very stressful too, and it was surprising because we're scientists and we're never involved in all this kind of political and so it's kind of a very stressful time after we published the paper.
You said something interesting before we went on, that in fact since the research has been cut off for this, since the funding for this research has been cut off for so long, that the scientists with expertise in this area have literally almost dried up in this country?
Yes. Well, these scientists either retire because there's no funding, or either move to another area that they can get funding. So they're basically out of the area. So it come up to the point is that if the U.S. government come up with some money to do this type of research, there's nobody to do it because people already left the field. So that is a big...
You can watch the full video of Dr. Lai explaining this on our webpage on industry influence to the research. And if you go online, we have links to everything I'm about to talk about, all the studies, all the resources, and also all the videos.
Mr. Secretary General, UN staff have repeatedly been told that they are the most important resource of this organization. Since December 2015, the staff here at the Vienna International Center have been exposed to off-the-scale electromagnetic radiation from Wi-Fi and mobile phone boosters installed on very low ceilings throughout the buildings. Current public exposure levels are at least 1 quintillion, that's 18 zeros, 1 quintillion times above natural background radiation, according to Professor Olle Johansson of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. The highly dangerous biological effects of EMFs have been documented by thousands of studies since 1932, indicating that we may be facing a global health catastrophe orders of magnitude worse than those caused by tobacco and cigarettes. Mr. Secretary General, on the basis of the precautionary principle, I urge you to have these EMF-emitting devices removed immediately from these buildings and to call a halt to any rollout of 5G at UN duty stations, because 5G is designed to deliver concentrated and focused electromagnetic radiation in excess of 100 times current levels in the same way as do directed energy weapons. There is currently an international appeal signed by 237 EMF scientists from 41 nations urging the UN and particularly the WHO to exert strong leadership in fostering the development of more protective EMF guidelines, encouraging precautionary measures and educating the public about the considerable health risks, particularly the risks to children and fetal development. Mr. Secretary General, I think we have a unique opportunity here at the UN office at Vienna. Since our medical records are digitized, you have the choice and the possibility of releasing data on a closed population exposed to off-the-scale levels of electromagnetic radiation in a metal-walled building, which exacerbates the situation, to establish if there have already been abnormal health consequences for the UN staff here in the last 28 months. I urge you to do so and stop any rollout of 5G immediately. Thank you.
Sorry, because we are talking with someone that is a little bit ignorant on these things. You're talking to the Wi-Fi systems?
On the ceilings of these buildings, Wi-Fi boosters and cell phone boosters were installed without consultation, without information to staff in December 2015. The situation here is extremely dangerous. I have heard anecdotally of many people who have had health problems. I don't know if they are related, but the precautionary principle would dictate that we use our medical records to look into this and that we remove these dangerous devices immediately. Thank you.
Well, I become worried because I put those devices in my house.
Not a good idea.
I will have to, I confess my ignorance on this. We will have to, but I'm going to raise this with WHO, which I think is the organization that might be able to deal with it properly, for them to, put someone...
I moved to California, Southern California. The 60 hertz work that we did was supported by a contract from the Department of Energy. The radio frequency radiation work that we did was supported by Motorola. The relationship was really very cordial and very stress-free, but only up until we started generating data. These folks were very, very upset and began to talk about how are they going to handle this, what sort of spin can we put on this, what can we expect from this, and from that point on the relationship changed. What we saw was that Motorola began to exert more and more control over the work, telling us what to do, telling us how to write abstracts, what to say in the abstracts, what to say in the papers. I said, how to do the work. No, don't do this. Yes, do it this way. This was unacceptable. I had completed our study of DNA damage, and I submitted the final report to Motorola, and I got a call from Mays Swycord at Motorola. Now, Mays is the former head of the Center for CDRA, Center for Devices and Radiological Health at the FDA, and he left the FDA and went to work for Motorola. Keep that connection in mind. That's interesting. He also handpicked his successor at the FDA. Anyhow, Mays didn't like the work. Then there was another phone call. Point is, I kept getting nothing from these people. They simply weren't willing to accept my interpretation of my study, my evaluation of my study, my knowledge of science at that point, and tried to urge me not to publish the study. They didn't tell me not to. They just said, no, this isn't ready for publication. And they wanted me to do more work. I stopped taking calls from them, and I went ahead and published the study. It came out in 1998, and I wanted nothing more to do with any Motorola-related work. I wasn't going to put up with that kind of control. I wouldn't put up with that attitude. That was it. I think one has to exercise caution at this point, and what makes...
In 2011, the Cancer Institute of World Health Organization, with the help of 31 experts from all around the world, classified radiofrequency radiation, including mobile phone radiation, as possibly carcinogenic. And 3 weeks later, it was very strange because the World Health Organization headquarters issued a fact sheet that dismissed the cancer risks and the cancer classification.
Whilst the IARC classification covers all radio frequencies, Fact Sheet 193 only refers to mobile phones. This creates the impression that the classification does not apply to other uses of radio frequencies, such as masts, Wi-Fi, DECT phones, radars, and industrial uses. But the sentence, "To date, no adverse health effects have been established as being caused by mobile phone use," fails to reflect the accumulating body of evidence. This WHO wording is strangely reminiscent of the discourse of the manufacturers who demand the highest level of scientific evidence.
And the very fact that you can interpret this sentence as contradictory that means that it's not very clear, it is even a bit misleading. So we asked the WHO in Geneva to correct that part of the fact sheet.
Soit corrigé dans leur fact sheet. Mais malheureusement...
But unfortunately, I've checked, the sentence is still there.
This key sentence has enabled manufacturers to deliver a message downplaying the IARC classification, which actually recognizes some tentative evidence for the increase in cancers due to exposure to radio frequencies.
I wanted to know, I asked the responsible person at the World Health Organization, Emily van Deventer, who were the experts that wrote this fact sheet, this new information that was contradicting the Cancer Institute classification, and I had no answer.
Emily van Deventer is the current head of the EMF project within the World Health Organization. In June 2006, she replaced Michael Repaccioli, who she had assisted since the year 2000.
So when I met Emily van Deventer in Brussels 5 months later, I confronted her with my email, and I said I never get any reply to my question, and I repeated my question. Who are the experts that you consulted and helped you write this fact sheet? And she still refused to answer to this very simple question. Who are the experts?
This one was just updated.
Yes, but who wrote it?
I am in charge of the fact sheet.
You wrote
and
it?
That the sentences that
they're updated
and then
with
it is a corporate fact sheet. It is not my fact sheet.
Yes, but who wrote it?
Who changed the sentence?
Yes, was it you or did you consult external experts?
I changed the sentence. I consulted with a number of experts.
Who were they?
And I had to ask my administration if that is an acceptable question.
Emily van Deventer has no specialist knowledge in the field of health. She is an electrical engineer, with expertise in electromagnetic fields. She is a member of the IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, which originally set the international standards for public exposure to mobile phones.
And I spend my time full-time here in Washington, D.C., educating legislators regarding the health effects, the biological and health effects from wireless radiation. And part of our team is cancer epidemiologists, toxicologists, cellular biologists, all the people that the FCC do not employ. As a matter of fact, the FCC does not even have a health department. And the working around of health effects from wireless technology is really a sad chapter in the history of this country. And frankly, there's no nice way to say this. The wireless industry is lying about health, and they're lying about this technology and how it needs to be implemented. And coming from California, we have more insight because they're already beginning to install, so we know more about it. I think this video is important because it's one of
really high frequency, so everybody thinks it doesn't go very far, but it's a really big height, and so that's what allows you to gain the
Well, wait a second now. Do we have the capacity to get that shown? No?
It's okay. It's only 30 seconds.
Okay. But I'm getting wavelengths that are bothering me. I'm kidding.
This is downloaded.
We're 3,000 feet away from our radio node. The cool thing about this is we did not move the radio node. It's pointing down to serve the customers in that area. But here, even 3,000 feet away, we're still getting gig speeds.
I think what's important about this Verizon advertisement for 5G is they make it very clear that their technology can travel very easily 3,000 feet. So that's more than half a mile. So what that means is they do not need to locate these transmitters so close to people. They do not need to locate them so close together to each other and not so close to human beings and other living things that will be affected by it. So they're really lying about the implementation of this technology. If you look, Councilwoman, if you look at this brochure here, this is from Verizon themselves, and this is regarding their insurance for their wireless devices. And what it says is we do not cover emissions or pollutants emitted by our wireless technology. But what's really interesting about this brochure is they define wireless radiation in all its terms as a pollutant themselves. And they say here, they do not cover and they exclude coverage for pollution, the discharge, dispersal, seepage, migration, or escape of pollutants. Pollutants mean any solid, liquid, gaseous, or thermal irritant or contaminant, including smoke, vapor, soot, fumes, acid, alkalines, chemicals, artificially produced electric fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, sound waves, microwaves, and all artificially produced ionizing or non-ionizing radiation or waste. So what's interesting is they define wireless radiation as a pollutant when it comes to them covering and protecting themselves in terms of liability. But when they want to force it into our communities and blanket our communities with wireless radiation, supposedly it's safe. And I ask you, Councilwoman, that all of the representatives from the wireless industry be asked very specifically to state on the record that this wireless technology is safe for the health and safety of our residents. I want that on record because according to their own printed literature, that's not the case. And that's a big issue because working around health effects, known health effects, is really the MO. Whether it's the FCC order, which says that we have streamlining, so we don't want to consider health, environmental issues at all, so they can just work around it. And what really concerns me very much is that what we're not talking about is that we are talking about implementation, and that in the signing of the MLAs, the public was not included. The normal process was not included. Our elected officials were not included. That cannot be the normal due process in this city, but that's what's happening. And if people are really so eager to have this technology and it's so great, why not include the community's input? Why not have their input on what's going on? Now, another lie of the industry, and there's no other way to say it, is that these are going to be small cells and they won't be too bothersome to the community. This is in California. This is what it looks like when this is what it looks like upside down when they install. And what the plan is to be 4G. This is going to be 4G, and then they're going to put a 5G on top of it, and that's the power source that can be the size of 2 refrigerators, and you can see it's about 15 feet from this woman's home. There is no way this woman doesn't get sick, either short-term with neurological or long-term with cancer.
Where is this picture? Could you?
In Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa?
Yeah, and it's in the, you can find it in an article. I can send you the article.
Okay.
So what we have is the industry clearly lying to public representatives, which should outrage you enough that you stop the process and you start over again, because this is a forcing and workaround, and that is the MO. And what you need to understand is no wireless device, and 5G included, is safety tested before it's put on market. No antenna is safety tested before it's put on market. They only have to fall under an exposure guideline that is a thermal guideline only, which means you're only guaranteed not to be heated or burned by your phone or your antenna. Anything below that over time isn't covered, and that's where the real health effects are. The reality is this is the greatest environmental and safety threat of our time, and instead of fighting back and pushing back, especially when we have safe alternatives like wired fiber optic to the home, we are spending millions and billions and just showing the way to the industry of taking advantage of us. This is when we need our representatives to represent. This is when we need our representatives to push back. And it can't just be you, it has to be the entire council. This is truly wrong. You can only microwave radiate people so much. And what you'll see in my packet is a report from the Army on millimeter waves looking at 350 studies showing clear biological effects below thermal, below our safety guidelines. And what's interesting about this report is they said the subjects of these studies, 30 to 80% of them were aware of it because our skin and our eyes are going to absorb a disproportionate amount of this wireless radiation. So you're talking about serious effects to our skin and our nerves venerate our skin, so you're talking about affecting our entire neurological system and exposing our eyes to military-grade wireless radiation, and our eyes have no natural defense against this. So you're talking about putting this in front of people's homes, forcing it into their rooms. This is absolutely absurd. We have video from the FCC proceedings with one of the 5G engineers saying themselves, look, we are forcing these directed beams into people's windows at levels that we do not allow in our labs, in our safety labs. This is absolutely absurd, and the FCC shrugged it off and said, this isn't an issue we need to be discussing today.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, thank you for having this hearing. We've heard from a lot of witnesses from you today and others previously about the very important potential of 5G technology. It promises to bring us a new era of connectivity with internet speeds as much as 5 times faster than what we have today with much lower latency, and that's all a good thing. But 5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications to those additional sites that are likely to be located close to homes, schools, workplaces, and closer to the ground? Correct?
Correct, Senator. Yes.
So in December of 2018, I sent a letter to FCC Commissioner Carr asking him to cite for me recent scientific studies demonstrating the safety of this technology. What research has been done, where has it been published and compiled. He has essentially failed to do so, and just echo the general statements of the FDA, which shares regulatory responsibility for cell phones with the FCC. If you go to the FDA website, pretty unsatisfactory. There basically is a cursory and superficial citation to existing scientific data saying, quote, the FDA has urged the cell phone industry to take a number of steps, including support additional research on possible biological effects of radio frequency fields for the type of signal emitted by cell phones. I believe that Americans deserve to know what the health effects are, not to prejudge what scientific studies may show, and they deserve also a commitment to do the research on outstanding questions. So my question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Berry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
Thank you, Senator. I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, we rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
Anybody else know of industry commitments to back research, fund it, support it, to ascertain scientifically the health effect?
Senator, I'm not aware either, but I do know that with small cells especially, you're going to have lower power levels. And of course, as from a carrier perspective, you want to be able to manage interference so that that interference is the lowest interference possible. So I would think that some of those studies or some of that information could be utilized in looking at the health consequences. But no, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And because of the lack of accountability at every level of government when it comes to wireless radiation, the lack of any systematic review, and yet when you go to our government agencies' websites, it seems like everything is fine. We are in a situation where we are being sold devices to children, to and for animals, pregnant women, to people at every age, as if this technology is safe, when it was never, ever pre-market safety tested for long-term safety. And of course, there was evidence of harm and of effects at very, very low levels, even when the United States adopted the radiation limits that we did. However, that was dismissed because the EPA was defunded. So here are some examples of commercials and videos and the way industry is marketing to us. And I ask that everyone who watched this video until this point to please spread the word on this. Get informed. Speak to your neighbors, speak to your friends and families, and then contact your elected officials, because I fully believe we can fix this.
I was talking with our UK colleagues just today who were saying the UK is very similar to where we are now in outbreak because each of our countries have that independent spirit, but we don't want to be told what to do.
Hey everybody, I hope you guys have been hanging in there. I'd like to say that we are too, but it's actually been a really rough couple of weeks. I personally felt the shift just after Halloween, and it has not let up that I can tell. I've been trying extremely hard to keep my head down in the movie that we're making instead of the movie that's playing out in them streets out there. But it is very hard to do that. And the problem that I think that, one of the problems that I think that we have is that people don't realize that this isn't actually about a public health crisis. Okay, that is just the catalyst for the future that was already being built and was already coming, that they've been talking about instituting, that we've been talking about on this channel for years. In fact, I would say we've been talking about this before we knew that's what we were talking about. I don't think that people realize the choices that they will be forced to make in the future that is being built on the back of what is happening now.
Of this virus, I think we're in the middle of a massive experiment worldwide. And that
where's the guinea pigs?
Maybe the experiment is, will people listen to scientists? If we all paid attention to what scientists say, maybe the coronavirus will just blow on by and with a minimum of cases. And then we kicked its ass for obeying the recommendations of scientists.
The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
Satellite network. I'm going to look briefly at the changes that they've made and see what effects they might have on how the network functions. In their original proposal, the first 1,600 satellites were at an altitude of 1,150 kilometers. There were 30 orbital planes and 50 satellites in each orbital plane. The new proposal changes this initial phase considerably. In the revised proposal, the first phase of the satellites at a much lower altitude of 550 kilometers.
We're in a very exciting time in neuroscience, and particularly from the standpoint of an engineer.
There's so much that we don't understand about the brain in general.
There's a fundamental desire for people to understand who they are and what makes them different from one another.
The brain really is the ultimate frontier.
What's unique about the brain is that many different fields can contribute.
What we're looking to do is foster collaboration within the societies.
If you look at what the BRAIN Initiative is, it's really a catalytic endeavor. Its purpose is to generate tremendous interest around the brain.
One thing that's been pretty clear across BRAIN initiatives has been the importance of engineering and technology.
There's so much computer and hardware being designed that's based on
neuro. A lot of the computational neuroscience that was developed 10, 15, 20 years ago is now being used by Google, by Facebook, by large tech companies.
So from the United States, with the BRAIN Initiative focusing on neurotechnologies, Human Brain Project in the EU focusing on computation and information technologies, the IEEE BRAIN Initiative is all about leveraging what IEEE has across all its societies, kind of create a critical mass of interest. And our end goal here is to be able to create workshops, standardization meetings, interact with commercial constituencies, government, other academics, to demonstrate the value that IEEE has.
Our job is to promote the field and I don't want to use the word educate, but interact with the public because they support our research.
So the more we are able to create even only quote-unquote frameworks where people with different backgrounds can talk and discuss and brainstorm together, the better it is.
The brain is super complex.
It's composed of billions of neurons, thousands of structures, different kinds of neurons, different kinds of structures that each seem to be interconnected both structurally and functionally.
You know that great reset thing you keep hearing about? You know, that technocratic agenda to exploit COVID to centralize economic power and transform society into a social credit score hyper-surveillance transhumanist dystopia? Yeah, that one. Well, it doesn't exist. The New York Times said so. I mean, the World Economic Forum literally celebrated the Great Reset on the same day the New York Times published this article. Time magazine devoted an entire issue to it, but it still doesn't exist. Just like this video from 2 months ago of Justin Trudeau heralding the coronavirus pandemic as an opportunity for a reset doesn't exist.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems.
He never said that. It was all just one empty conspiracy theory.
We're seeing a lot of people fall prey to disinformation, and if conservative MPs and others want to start talking about conspiracy theories.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
Conspiracy theories.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
Conspiracy theories.
Reset.
Conspiracy theories.
Reset.
Conspiracy theories.
I mean, Dr. Strangelove here literally endorses in his own book, which is called COVID-19, The Great Reset, implantable brain chips that can read your thoughts, and the onset of Minority Report style pre-crime programs where you're deemed guilty before you've even committed a crime. He admits that COVID is not an existential threat, but that it's an opportunity for technocrats to reorder society via a Great Reset. The World Economic Forum publishes regular promo videos hyping the Great Reset, but it still doesn't exist. I mean, it's worked wonders so far. Amazon, profit up 100%. Walmart, profit up 80%. Target, profit up 80%. Lowe's, profit up 74%. Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, Google, stock at record high. Small businesses, 21% closed, revenue for the rest down 30%. Wow, so helpful. Thanks to lockdown, the CEOs of these companies have seen their personal wealth increase by tens of billions, while small businesses have lost over 200 billion. While cabbies in the UK are on starvation wages. But yeah, this Great Reset sounds like a worker's paradise. Oh yeah, and you know all those rules they made? Lockdowns, face masks, social distancing. Yeah, well apparently the technocrats who made them don't have to abide by them. Do as we say, not as we do. Some Karen will screech at you in the street for not covering up, but Dianne Feinstein is apparently exempt indoors. Intelligence agencies are using cell phone networks to spy on pleb lockdown compliance. You're being told to cancel Thanksgiving, but Governor Gavin Newsom can dine with California Medical Association lobbyists inside a fancy $350 a meal French restaurant in violation of his own COVID-19 protocols he set for everyone else. And Lori Lightfoot can attend a pro-Biden street party while issuing stay-at-home orders to everyone else. The people who know the most about COVID aren't afraid of it at all. Interesting. Meanwhile, police in Australia are telling people they can't walk their dogs. They think you're stupid. Justin Trudeau, a normal Christmas is out of the question. But wait, The technocrats say that if we behave ourselves, they'll let us out of lockdown for a whole 5 days over Christmas. Thank you, globalists. How gracious of you.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply, and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
Rule number one is that the technology should drive the policy rather than the policy drive the technology.
And even how we cross the street, you can see some of it right there. Joining me now is Verizon's Chairman and CEO, Lowell McAdam, right here on the floor of the NYC. Thanks. Good morning, David. And thanks for the tour yesterday. It was interesting, of course. Not too far from here, you have a basically 5G coming into a large setup where you have a lot of different